The supreme crisis in the history of the Jews occurred in the year 70 CE, when their holy city, Jerusalem, was razed by the Romans, and they were left without a home, either for themselves or their God. Wrecked now both as a cult and a nation, it looked as though Israel would soon be destroyed, even as a people. But then the rabbis came to the fore, and the doom seemingly so inevitable was averted. They created what came to be called the Talmud, literally the teaching, and with it so walled in the Jews that they were able to not merely survive as a people, but even to thrive. In this the rabbis were supplementing a feat already accomplished by the prophets. The latter had furnished a final answer to the why of life for the Jew. They had told him he had been chosen for holy mission, that he was the suffering servant of the Lord, and that he must survive despite all hardships, because he alone could bring on the reign of the Lord. And now the rabbis came up with an answer to the how. They persuaded the Jew that, though landless now, he could still survive if he would but hold on to the Torah, the law. Ramparts of ritual, they insisted, could preserve him from the Gentiles more securely than any frontiers guarded by troops. And it was in the course of providing such ramparts that the rabbis brought forth the Talmud. The project began with a number of fragmentary notebooks containing some of the countless new ordinances derived by interpretation from the original 613 set down in the ancient Torah. Being uneven in their scope and authority, and also largely discrepant, these notebooks were finally supplanted around 200 CE by a master digest which came to be known as the Mishna, the repetition. This consisted of 6 well-organized volumes, giving some 4,000 legal decisions regulating every phase of Jewish life. No sooner, however, had the Mishnah been compiled than this in turn became a subject for interpretation, whereupon further compilation became imperative, and thus a work called the Gemara, the learning, emerged. The latter was far more than a mere law code. It was a vast anthology divided into 63 tractates, which gave the gist of the endless discussions carried on in the rabbinical academies during all of 3 centuries. When the Gemara was finally reduced to writing, around 500 CE, it was combined with the Mishnah and called the Talmud, the teaching. But even this did not exhaust the memorabilia of the rabbis. The Talmud, despite its diffusiveness, was primarily a legalistic anthology. Its compilers tried hard to include in it only such discussions as related more or less directly to the statutes and customs which a Jew must observe in daily life. That left out an enormous amount of academic discourse of a broader and often more diverting nature. For example, there were the legends with which the rabbis loved to regale themselves, the homilies they preached, the parables they invented, and the wealth of curious information and casual wisdom which they kept handing down from one generation to the next. Once the Talmud was completed, this other material was gathered together, and a series of works appeared called the Midrashim, the expositions. Though these date from the 6th century onward, their contents are essentially contemporaneous with the Talmud itself. Rabban Gamaliel used to say, "Get yourself a teacher and keep away from doubtful matters, and never tithe by guesswork." Simeon, his son, said, "All my life I have grown up among the wise, and I have found nothing better than silence. The chief thing is not to study, but to do, and he who says too much encourages sin." Rabban Simeon ben Gamaliel said, "The world rests on 3 things, truth, law, and peace." Rabban Gamaliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, said, "It is good to follow a workday occupation, as well as to study the Torah, for between the two one forgets to sin. Beware of the authorities, for they make no advances to a man except for their own purposes. They seem friendly when it is to their advantage, but desert a man when he is in trouble. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai used to say, 'Don't feel self-righteous if you have learned much Torah, because that is what you were created for.' He said to his disciples, 'Go and discover what best helps a man to find the right way of life.'" Rabbi Eliezer answered, "A good eye." Rabbi Yehoshua answered, "A good comrade." Rabbi Jose answered, "A good neighbor." Rabbi Simeon answered, "Foresightedness." Rabbi Elazar answered, "A good heart." Rabbi Yochanan then said to them, "I prefer Rabbi Elazar's answer, for his words include all of yours." Rabbi Eliezer said, "Let your comrade's honor be as dear to you as your own, and do not be quick to get angry. Also, repent before it is too late. Warm yourself at the fire of the learned, but beware of their glowing coals, lest you get scorched. The bite of the learned is like the bite of a fox, their sting is like a scorpion's, their hiss like a serpent's, and all their words are like coals of fire." Rabbi Yehoshua said, "The evil eye and the evil desire and hatred of humanity cut a man off from the world." Rabbi Jose said, "Let the property of your comrade be as dear to you as your own, and set yourself to learn Torah, for you can never inherit it, and let all your actions be for the sake of heaven." Rabbi Simeon said, "Don't pray mechanically, but let your prayer be a heartfelt plea and entreaty before God." Rabbi Elazar said, "Be avid to learn Torah, and know how to refute a disbeliever." Rabbi Hanina, deputy of the priests, said, "Pray for the stability of the government, because were it not for fear of the government, men would swallow each other alive." Rabbi Hanania ben Teradian said, "When two sit together and fail to discuss Torah, that is the seat of the scornful. But when two sit together and do discuss Torah, the Shekinah rests on them." Rabbi Simeon said, "If 3 have eaten at one table and failed to speak words of Torah during the meal, it is as if they had eaten of the sacrifices to the dead." Rabbi Hanina ben Hachinai said, "He who stays up all night, and he who keeps to himself, and he who devotes his mind to idle thoughts, such a one ruins his own well-being." Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa used to say, "When one's deeds are even greater than one's knowledge, the knowledge is effective. But when one's knowledge is greater than one's deeds, the knowledge is futile." He would also say, "The Spirit of God is pleased with one whom the spirit of man finds pleasing." Rabbi Dosa ben Harhina said, "Sleep in the morning, wine during the day, childish talk and association with boors, all these destroy a man's life." Rabbi Elazar Hamodai said, "Whoever profanes sacred things, or despises the holy days, or shames his comrade in public, or voids the covenants of Father Abraham, or misinterprets the Torah, even though he have much learning and many virtuous deeds, he still has no place in the world to come." Rabbi Ishmael said, "Be obedient to a superior, affable to a petitioner, and friendly to all mankind." Rabbi Akiba said, "Jesting and ribaldry lead a man to lewdness. Tradition protects the Torah, tithes protect wealth, vows protect virtue, and silence protects wisdom." Rabbi Eleazar ben Azariah said, "Where there is no Torah, there is no refinement, and where there is no refinement, there can be no Torah. Where there is no wisdom, there can be no reverence, and where there is no reverence, there can be no wisdom. Where there is no knowledge, there can be no insight, and where there is no insight, there can be no knowledge. When there is no food, there can be no Torah, and where there is no Torah, there can be no food." Ben Zoma said, "Who is wise? He who can learn from every man." "Who is strong? He who can control his passions." "Who is rich? He who can feel satisfied with his lot." "Who is honored? He who honors mankind." Ben Azai used to say, "Despise no man, and consider nothing impossible, for every man has his hour, and everything its place." Rabbi Levitus of Jabna said, "Be extremely humble, for the destiny of mortal man is the worm." Rabbi Joseph said, "He who honors the Torah is honored by mankind." Rabbi Meir said, "Be less busy with business and more busy with the Torah. If you start neglecting the Torah, you will find more and more reasons to continue neglecting it." Rabbi Elazar ben Shammua said, "Let the honor of your disciple be as dear to you as the honor of your colleague, the honor of your colleague as dear as your respect for your teacher, and your respect for your teacher as dear as your awe of God." Rabbi Yehuda said, "Be cautious in teaching, for an error in teaching may lead to willful sin." Rabbi Simeon said, "There are 3 crowns, the crown of learning, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty, but greater than any of these is the crown of a good name." Rabbi Nehorai said, "Move to a place where there is learning, because you cannot expect learning to move to you." Rabbi Janai said, "It is beyond our power to explain either the prosperity of the wicked or the afflictions of the righteous." Rabbi Metzatiah ben Harash said, "Be first in greeting all men, and be rather a tail to lions than a head to foxes." Rabbi Simeon ben Eleazar said, "Don't try to calm your comrade when he is in a rage, or console him when he is in despair, or question him when he is vowing, and don't try to see him in the hour of his disgrace." Rabbi Samuel the younger said, "Don't rejoice when your enemy falls, or be glad when he stumbles." Elisha ben Abuya said, "If one learns as a child, to what is it comparable? To writing on clean paper. And if one learns as an old man, to what is that comparable? To writing on blotted paper." Rabbi Joseph bar Yehuda of Kefar ha-Babli said, "He who learns from the immature, to what is he comparable? To one who eats unripe grapes and drinks wine fresh from the winepress. But he who learns from the aged is comparable to one who eats ripe grapes and drinks old wine." Rabbi said, "What is the proper path for a man to follow? Any that seems honorable in his own sight, and that wins him honor from his fellow men." He also said, "Don't look at the pitcher, but at what it contains. Sometimes a new pitcher is full of old wine, and an old pitcher is empty even of new wine." Rabbi Eleazar ha-Kapar said, "Envy, cupidity, and ambition drive a man from the world." Yehuda ben Tamah used to say, "At the age of 5 one is ready to study the Bible, at 10 to study the Mishna, at 13 to observe the commandments, at 15 to study the Talmud, at 18 to get married, at 20 to start earning a livelihood, at 30 to enter into one's full strength, at 40 to show discernment, at 50 to give counsel, at 60 to start feeling old, at 70 to turn white, at 80 for travail and trouble, at 90 for senility, and at 100 for death." Ben Bagbag said, "Study it over and over again, for everything is in it. Grow gray and old studying it, and never forsake it, for there is no better path for a man to follow. This is the way of the studious life. Eat a crust with salt, drink measured water, sleep on the floor, endure much hardship, and wrestle with the Torah. If you do all that, you will be happy, and it will be well with you. That is, you will be happy in this world, and it will be well with you in the world to come. Don't try to be a great one, and don't look for more honor than your learning merits. Don't crave to sit at the table of kings, for your own table is better than theirs, and your crown likewise." Rabbi Joseph ben Kisma said, "Once while on a walk I met a man, and after we had exchanged greeting he said to me, 'Rabbi, whence do you hail?' I answered, 'From a great city where there are sages and scribes.' So then he said, 'If you agree to stay with us here, I'll give you 1,000 gold coins, as well as precious stones and pearls.' Whereupon I answered, 'If you were to offer me all the silver and gold and precious stones and pearls in creation, I'd still refuse to stay in any place where there is no study of the Torah.' There are 7 traits in a wise man. He does not speak in the presence of one wiser than himself. He does not interrupt when a colleague speaks. He does not rush out with a rejoinder. He asks questions that are relevant and gives answers that are logical. He deals with first things first and last things last. He readily admits when he does not know about a matter. He acknowledges the truth. The opposites of these traits mark the boorish man. There are 4 types among men. The ordinary one says, 'What is mine, and what is yours.' The strange one says, 'What is mine is yours, and what is yours is mine.' The saintly one says, 'What is mine is yours, and what is yours.' The wicked one says, 'What is mine, and what is yours is also mine.' There are 4 types of temperaments. Easy to provoke and easy to calm. Here the fault is cancelled by the virtue. hard to provoke, but hard to calm. Here the virtue is cancelled by the fault. Hard to provoke and easy to calm. This is the temperament of a good man. Easy to provoke, but hard to calm. This is the temperament of a wicked man. There are 4 kinds of disciples. Quick to learn, but quick to forget. In him the gift is cancelled by the failing. Slow to learn, but slow to forget. In him the failing is cancelled by the gift. Quick to learn and slow to forget. His is a fortunate lot. Slow to learn and quick to forget. His is an evil plight. There are 4 types of almsgivers. He who gives but doesn't want others to do so. He who wants others to give but won't do so himself. He who gives and wants others to do likewise. He who neither gives nor wishes others to give. There are 2 Gemaras in existence. One belongs in what is known as the Talmud Yerushalmi and grew up in Palestine, where a remnant of Israel continued to maintain itself despite the most harrowing afflictions. The other, in the Talmud Babli, was created in Babylonia, where the Jews were safe from Roman oppression and rabbinical studies could be carried on unhindered. This second work is naturally the superior one, so much so that it is commonly referred to as the Talmud. The Torah is likened to salt, the Mishna to peppers, but the Gemara to spices. The Torah is likened to water, the Mishna to wine, but the Gemara to spiced wine. The elders in Rome were asked, "If your God takes no pleasure in the worship of idols, why does he not destroy them?" They replied, "If men had worshipped the things which the world does not need, he would certainly have destroyed them. But they worship the sun, moon, stars, and planets. Is he to destroy his world because of the fools?" The questioners replied, "Then he ought at least to destroy the things which the world does not need, and leave the others." The elders said, "Then the worshippers of the stars, sun, and moon would be strengthened in their idolatry, for they would say, 'Behold, these verily are true gods, for they have not been destroyed.'" It happened that when Rabbi Samuel went to Rome, he chanced to find a bracelet belonging to the queen. A crier went about the kingdom and announced, "Whoever returns the bracelet within 30 days shall receive such and such a reward, but if it is found upon him after 30 days, his head will be cut off." Nevertheless, Rabbi Samuel would not return it until after the 30 days had elapsed. When he finally did, the queen asked him, "Did you not hear the proclamation?" He answered, "Yes." So she said, "Then why did you not return it within the 30 days? In order," he answered, "that you should not say I feared you, for I returned it only because I feared God." Whereupon the queen cried, "Blessed be the God of the Jews." Rab said, "He whose mind is not quieted should not pray." Rabbi Hanina was wont not to pray when he was irritated. Rabbi Yohanan said, "He who recounts the praise of God more than is fitting will be torn away from the world." Rab said, "Whoever has it in his power to pray on behalf of his neighbor and fails to do so is called a sinner." Rabbi Meir said, "A Gentile who lives a goodly life is like a high priest." God says, "Both the Gentiles and the Israelites are my handiwork. Therefore, how can I let the former perish on account of the latter?" Antoninus the emperor once asked Rabbi Judah the patriarch, "Will I have a share in the world to come?" Rabbi Judah replied, "Yes." "But is it not prophesied," the heathen demanded, "that none shall be left of the house of Esau?" "Yes," came the quick reply of Rabbi Judah, "but that applies only to those who commit Esau's acts of violence." The Jew is urged to resort to the aid of Gentiles in administering the affairs of his community. In a city where there are both Jews and Gentiles, the collectors of alms collect both from Jews and Gentiles, and feed the poor of both, visit the sick of both, bury both, comfort the mourners whether they be Jews or Gentiles, and restore the lost goods of both. To cheat a Gentile is even worse than cheating a Jew, for besides being a violation of the moral law, it brings Israel's religion into contempt and desecrates the name of Israel's God. He who steals from a non-Jew is bound to make restitution to the non-Jew. It is worse to steal from a non-Jew than to steal from an Israelite, because of the profanation of the name. Once the Roman Senate planned to adopt a law prohibiting the observance of the Sabbath and the performance of the circumcision rite. Rabbi Reuben decided to outwit the oppressors, so he disguised himself as a Roman, came before the Senate, and said, "You hate the Jews, yet you will enable them to become richer if you make them labor 7 days a week instead of 6. So the Senate voted down the first prohibition. Rabbi Reuben continued, "You will also keep them from weakening themselves if you forbid the rite of circumcision." So this prohibition, too, was voted down. The highest wisdom is kindness. Deeds of kindness are equal in weight to all the commandments. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. This is the great general rule in Torah. The beginning and the end thereof is the performance of loving kindness. Kindness says to Torah, "Thou art beautiful only if I beautify thee." Thou art like unto a beautiful woman who needs a maidservant to watch over her beauty. If 2 men claim thy help, and one is thy enemy, help him first. Almsgiving and deeds of loving kindness are equal to all the commandments of the Torah, but loving kindness is greater. Almsgiving is exercised toward the living, but deeds of loving kindness toward the living and the dead. Almsgiving only to the poor, deeds of loving kindness to the poor and to the rich. Also, almsgiving is done with a man's money, deeds of loving kindness with his money and in other ways. Better is he who shows a smiling countenance than he who offers milk to drink. Whoever gives a small coin to a poor man has 6 blessings bestowed upon him, but he who speaks a kind word to him obtains 11 blessings. Once a disciple of Rabbi Akiba became ill, and no one visited him. Rabbi Akiba, however, entered the sick man's room, arranged that it be swept and cleaned, placed the pillow in order, and the like. All this assisted the recovery of the disciple. He exclaimed, "O Master, thou hast revived me." When Rabbi Akiba departed, he said, "Whosoever neglects to visit a friendless, sick person is as if he shed his blood." A man should always be alert in the fear of God, which means giving the soft answer that turns away wrath, increasing peace with all men, even the heathen in the street, so that he may be beloved above and on earth. He who has a claim for money upon his neighbor, and knows that the latter is unable to pay, must not keep crossing his path. People say, if 2 logs are dry and one is wet, the kindling of the 2 will kindle the wet log as well. People say, either companionship or death. A torch in the hands of one who walks alone at night is like 1 companion. Moonlight is like 2 companions. In choosing a friend, go up a step. He who entreats aid for his comrade, though he himself is in need, is answered first. It is better for a man to cast himself into a flaming oven than to shame his comrade in public. 2 dogs tending a flock were always quarreling. When the wolf attacked one, however, the other thought, "If I do not help my neighbor today, the wolf may attack me tomorrow." Thereupon the 2 dogs settled their differences, and together they killed the wolf. When Ullah ben Kosheb was hunted by the Roman government, he took refuge in Lud with Rabbi Joshua ben Levi. The soldiers came and threatened to lay the entire city waste unless the fugitive was surrendered, whereupon Rabbi Joshua persuaded him to give himself up. Now the prophet Elijah had been in the habit of appearing to this rabbi in visions, but from then on he never came again. So the rabbi fasted many days, and at last Elijah did reappear, but only to say, "Would it be right for me to show myself to informers?" Rabbi Jeremiah said, "He who occupies himself with the affairs of the community is as one who studies the law. If the community is in trouble, a man must not say, 'I will go to my house and eat and drink, and peace shall be with thee, O my soul.' But a man must share in the trouble of the community, even as Moses did. He who shares in its troubles is worthy to see its consolation." Honi Hama'agal once saw on his travels an old man planting a carob tree. He asked him when he thought the tree would bear fruit. "After 70 years," was the reply. "Do you expect to live 70 years and eat the fruit of thy labor?" "I did not find the world desolate when I entered it," said the old man, "and as my fathers planted for me before I was born, so do I plant for those who will come after me." The command to give charity weighs as much as all the other commandments put together. He who gives alms in secret is greater than Moses. 2 disciples of Rabbi Hanina, who, like their master, disbelieved in the power of sorcerers, went into the forest to chop some firewood. They met an astrologer who read their horoscope and predicted that they would not return alive. This, however, did not deter them from going on their way. They met an old man who accosted them and asked for food. They had only a single loaf of bread, but they divided it with him. When they returned, people who had heard the prediction asked the astrologer, "Is then your astrology false?" He invited the 2 disciples to unwrap the bundles of wood which they carried. In each of them half a snake was found. "What did you do," asked the astrologer, "to merit escape from sure death?" "We know of nothing," they answered, "except that we gave half a loaf of bread to an old man." Whereupon the astrologer cried, "What can I do if the God of the Jews is placated with half a loaf of bread?" Charity knows neither race nor creed. Rabbis Eliezer, Joshua, and Akiba went to the neighborhood of Antioch to make a collection for needy scholars. A certain Abba Judah lived there, who was very liberal in giving. But he lost all his wealth, and when the rabbis came he was ashamed and went home, and his visage was dejected. His wife said to him, "Why do you look so dejected?" He replied, "The rabbis have come here, and I do not know what to do." His wife, who was even more pious than he, then said to him, "You still own one field. Sell half of it, and give them the proceeds." He did so, whereupon the rabbis prayed for him and said, "May your needs be supplied." When they left, the man went to plow the half of the field that was still his, and as he did so, his cow stumbled and broke her hoof. He bent down to help her up, and God opened his eyes, and he found a treasure. Then he said, "Surely for my benefit has this cow broken her hoof." When the rabbis came again, they asked how Abba Judah fared. The reply was, "Who can see Abba Judah? So rich is he in cattle and sheep and camels. He is as wealthy as he was before." Then Abba Judah himself came to the rabbis, and he greeted them and said, "Your prayer has produced fruit upon fruit." Then they said, "Though on the last occasion others gave more than you, see, we put your name at the head of our list." And they took him with them, and made him sit next to them at their dinner, and they applied to him the verse in Proverbs, "A man's gift makes room for him, and brings him before great men." If a great man has said something seemingly illogical, laugh not at it, but try to understand it. As the kernel of a nut is not despised, even though the shell be marred, so it is with the scholar. The emperor's daughter once said to Rabbi Joshua ben Hanina, who was very ugly, "How is it that your God saw fit to put such glorious wisdom in so hideous a vessel?" He replied, "Why does your father keep wine in an earthen pitcher?" "How else should we keep it?" she asked. "People of your rank," said the rabbi, "should keep their wine in vessels of gold or silver." Thereupon the empress persuaded her father to transfer the wine from earthen to gold and silver vessels. The wine, however, turned sour. The emperor summoned the rabbi and inquired why he had given such poor counsel. Rabbi Joshua answered, "I did so to show to thy daughter that wisdom is like wine, and best kept in a plain vessel." "But," the girl objected, "are there not handsome scholars as well?" "Yes," answered the rabbi, "but they might have been greater scholars had they been ugly." He who learns and does not teach is like a myrtle which grows in the desert. No one receives enjoyment from it. If a disciple sits at a trial and sees that his master errs, he must interfere. A woman recognizes the worth of a guest quicker than a man. A bride who has fine eyes is fine throughout. A man should not marry a woman with the thought in mind that he may divorce her. There is no marriage settlement wherein there is no quarrel. Rab said, "Be careful not to hurt your wife, because woman is prone to tears and sensitive to wrong." Rabbi Helbo said, "Be careful about the honor of your wife, for blessing enters the house only because of the wife." He who loves his wife as himself, who honors her more than himself, who rears his children in the right path, and who marries them off at the proper time of their life, concerning him it is written, "And thou wilt know thy home is at peace." Do not inspire overmuch fear among the members of thy household. Anger in a home is like rottenness in fruit. Immorality in a home is like a worm in fruit. The Torah teaches us a lesson. First build a home, then marry. The life of the mother takes precedence over the life of the unborn child. A man should not marry a pregnant widow or a divorcee until after the child is born. Do not threaten a child, either punish or forgive. If you must strike a child, strike with the string of a shoe. A child is inclined to exaggerate his own importance. Rabbi Zerah said, "One must not promise to give something to a child and not give it to him, because thereby he is taught to lie. He who gives food to a small child must tell his mother." It is important for the development of a growing child that he be given things to break. Rabbah often bought imperfect earthenware for his little ones to break if they wished. The father's obligations to his son are: he must circumcise him, redeem him, teach him Torah, teach him a trade, and help him secure a wife. Some say he should also teach him to swim. Rabbi Judah ben Eli said, "A man who does not teach his son a trade teaches him robbery." Take care of the children of the poor, for they are the ones who advance science. Encourage the children of the peasants, for it is they who increase knowledge. Rabbah said, "If there are more than 25 children in a class for elementary instruction, an assistant should be appointed. If there are 50 children in a class, 2 competent instructors should be in charge. If a teacher is to be appointed, preference should be given to him who teaches thoroughly, not to him who teaches much superficially, for an error once learned is difficult to unlearn. He who understands the why and wherefore of what he learns does not forget it quickly. People say, when food is lacking in the larder, quarrel knocks at the door. No labor, however humble, is dishonoring. The right of the working man always has precedence over that of his employer. The son of Rabbi Yohanan ben Matthias hired several laborers and promised them their meals. His father said, "It would have been better had you given them their full hire in money and let them buy their own meals, for a worker is entitled to eat what he himself prefers." Said Rabbi Huna, "The waiter should have his portion after the meal is over. But if fat meat or old wine is served, he must receive it immediately, that he may be spared the pain of longing for it." Rabbi Judah said in the name of the Rab, "A man is forbidden to eat anything until he has fed his beast. No man may buy a beast, an animal, or a bird until he has provided food for it." Zunan met Rabbi Akiba and said, "Rabbi, there is a thing that perplexes me greatly. Scores of sick and ailing people come and testify, 'We have worshipped in this or that temple of an idol, and we have been cured.'" Rabbi Akiba replied, "I shall explain it to you by means of a parable. In a certain town there lived a trustworthy person who owned a strong safe, and people would let him store their valuables without either witness or a receipt. Once a man came with witnesses for his deposit. He followed this routine many times, but finally on one occasion brought no witnesses. The wife of the trustworthy man said to him, "Let us teach this fellow a lesson, since he mistrusts us. When he asks for his deposit, deny that we have received it." Her husband answered, "Because this man does not act correctly, shall I do likewise?" So it is with sicknesses. When God sends them, he places a limited time upon them. Would it be right for these ailments to betray their mission and not depart from their victims when their time is past, merely because those victims have been superstitious and behaved like fools? Rabbi Isaac said, "A ruler is not to be appointed unless the community is first consulted." In the place where there is already a leader, do not seek to become a leader. But in the place where there is no leader, strive to become a leader. Greatness seeks out the man who runs away from greatness. Before I was elected to head the court, I would have thrown to the lions anyone who would have suggested to me to become a candidate. After my election, I would throw boiling water on anyone who would suggest that I resign. A man may not accuse himself of a crime. A man cannot be declared guilty in his absence. Judgment delayed is judgment voided. The whole worth of a benevolent deed lies in the love that inspires it. It is not external rites that win forgiveness, but inward sincerity. The essence of goodness is good intent. For every affliction, silence is the best remedy. Press thy lips together, and be not in a hurry to answer. If silence be good for the wise, how much the better for fools. Why was man created on the 6th day? To teach that if he is ever swollen with pride, it can be said to him, "A flea came ahead of thee in creation." One must not say to a man who has repented and changed his way of life, "Remember your former deeds." A penny added to a penny creates in the end a large sum. Teach your tongue to say, "I do not know," lest you invent something and be trapped. When man appears before the throne of judgment, the first question he is asked is not, "Have you believed in God?" or "Have you prayed and observed the ritual?" He is asked, "Have you dealt honorably and faithfully in all your dealings with your fellow man?" Once the tradesman has made up his mind to take a certain price for his goods, he may not raise it even if he has the chance. Nor may the tradesman demand twice the amount of his debt, in order that he may more easily recover the true amount. When a man commits the same offense twice, it seems to him already permissible. The evil impulse is sweet in the beginning and bitter in the end. It can be proved by the Torah, the prophets, and the other sacred writings that a man is led along the road which he wishes to follow. When two quarrel, he who yields first displays the nobler nature. All lies are forbidden, unless uttered in order to make peace. Why have fingers been made flexible? So that we may stop our ears with them when evil is being spoken. Stealing is as wicked as shedding blood and revering idols. Rab said, "On the judgment day a man will have a demerit on his record for each thing he beheld with his eyes and declined to enjoy. In the world to come a man will be asked to give an account for that which, being excellent to eat, he gazed at and did not eat." This is the penalty for the liar. Even when he tells the truth, no one believes him. The chief merits are, at a wedding to cause merriment, among mourners to keep silent, at a lecture to listen, at a session to arrive early, at teaching to concentrate, in time of fasting to give to charity. God loves these three: the person who does not get angry, the one who does not get drunk, and the one who does not insist upon his privileges. God hates these three: the person who says one thing with his mouth and thinks otherwise in his heart, the person who could give evidence in another's favor but does not do so, and the person who, being alone, sees his neighbor sin and gives unsupported testimony against him. There are three types of men whose life is not worth living: he who is prone to rage, he who is too soft-hearted, and he who is too fastidious. Three things are good in a little measure and evil in large: yeast, salt, and hesitation. One day Rabbi Eliezer brought up all possible arguments in the course of a legal dispute, but his colleagues refused to heed him. Finally he said, "If the law is as I teach it, let this carob tree give a sign." And the carob tree moved back 200 cubits. But the others said, "A carob tree proves nothing." So he said, "If the law is as I teach it, let the water in this channel give a sign." And the water in the channel flowed upward instead of downward. The others said to him, "The waters of a channel prove nothing." Then he said, "If the law is as I teach it, let the walls of the school decide." And the walls of the school leaned over as to fall. But Rabbi Joshua cursed the walls, saying, "When the pupils of the sages dispute a point of law, what business is that of yours?" Thereupon a divine echo thundered, "What ails you? Why do you harass Rabbi Eliezer? The law has always been what he teaches it to be." But Rabbi Joshua, rising to his feet, exclaimed, "It is not in heaven." What did he mean by those words? He meant that the Torah is no longer in heaven. Having been given to us from Mount Sinai once and for all, we need no longer pay heed to any heavenly voice. For in the Torah given at Sinai it is written, "The opinion of the majority shall prevail." The prophet Elijah appeared to Rabbi Nathan, who asked him, what was God doing at that moment when Rabbi Joshua denied the value of miracles? And the prophet replied, God was laughing and saying, "My children have outwitted me. My children have outwitted me."